Hey Jexiteers, thanks again for stopping by. If you're new to the channel, my name is Riley and I'm a former Jehovah's Witness. Today I need to have a rant about a Watchtower magazine that has my blood absolutely boiling. Just when I thought that this organization couldn't possibly get any more disingenuous, contradictory, or outright hypocritical, they publish a magazine that comes along and ruins all of my expectations. The magazine in question is the first release of the public edition of the Watchtower magazine, entitled Breaking the Cycle of Hatred. Now, I'd like to think that we are all in agreement that hatred is a negative thing and that the world would be a far better place without it. And at first glance, it seems like this particular magazine is in agreement with those sentiments. Now, at this point, I'd like to draw your attention to the cover image of the magazine. Now, what you can see here is a diverse group of people taking a selfie together. There are men, there are women, they're of mixed ages and ethnic backgrounds. So on the surface, this seems like a really nice, positive and heartwarming message. But as is usually the case with this organization, things are hardly ever what they appear to be on the surface. So let's dig a little deeper. The introductory article to this magazine opens with the following paragraph. Have you been the victim of hatred? If not, you have likely observed it in one form or another. The news is filled with reports of racism, homophobia, and xenophobia, expressions of hatred based on race, sexuality, or nationality. As a result, many governments are passing laws against various hate crimes. Wait, what? Is this really Watchtower calling out racism, xenophobia, and homophobia when they themselves are guilty of all three of those things? Really? And yes, they most definitely are guilty of all three of those things. But please, don't take my word for it, because I brought receipts. But before we dive into these examples, I just want to add a disclaimer. I'm only providing examples from Watchtower literature that were written after the year 1919. JWs believe that in the year 1919, Jesus returned to the earth invisibly and chose an organization called the Bible Students to be his one true religion and representatives on earth. That organization later became known as Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, there are several reasons why they believe this, all of them ridiculous, but that's a video for another day. So according to JW beliefs, from this point onwards in the year 1919, Jesus began a refining process of his one true religion and started directing them spiritually. And part of that refinement was directing them to abandon previously held false doctrines. Now, everything I've just said is by no means a fact, by no means whatsoever. But what is a fact is that Jehovah's Witnesses genuinely believe this. That being the case, a believing Jehovah's Witness watching this video could reasonably argue that any false doctrines or grotesque opinions that the organization had before 1919 don't count, because that was prior to Jesus leading them and directing them in true worship. Now, as ridiculous as this whole premise is, that is actually a fair point. So in the interest of fairness, I'm only going to include examples that were written after 1919. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's tackle our first instance of blatant hypocrisy in the matter of racism. Now, when I was looking for instances of racism in Watchtower literature, I was genuinely spoiled for choice. There were that many results. I honestly didn't know what to choose. Narrowing the results down to post-1919 publications helped a little bit. Then I finally decided to use this portion of spiritual food from Jehovah's one true religion. This screenshot is of the July 24th, 1929 edition of the Golden Age magazine, published by the Watchtower organization. The Golden Age magazine would later come to be known as the Awake magazine, which we're all familiar with today. This is what it says in the questions from readers section on page 702. Question: is there anything in the Bible that reveals the origin of the Negro? Answer: it is generally believed that the curse which Noah pronounced upon Canaan was the origin of the black race. Certain it is that when Noah said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren," he pictured the future of the colored race. They have been and are a race of servants. But now in the dawn of the 20th century, we are all coming to see this matter of service in its true light and to find that the only real joy in life is serving others, not bossing them. There is no servant in the world as good as a colored servant, and the joy that he gets from rendering faithful service is one of the purest joys there is in the world. This is so disgusting and so offensive that I don't even need to expound on it further. The hypocrisy is self-evident. Now, of course, this is a very old article, and the attitudes towards race that people held at that period of time are very different to what they are now for the majority of people. But when we're speaking about Jehovah's one true organization, his one true religion appointed by Jesus himself, just 10 years before this article was written, shouldn't we see a standard of morality that is far superior than that which was commonplace throughout the world in general at that time? Now, obviously, I know how Jehovah's Witnesses think. I used to be one. And they see themselves as being morally superior to the rest of the world for the reason that they refrain from so-called bad practices that the world sees as being perfectly fine. Well, evidently, racism is the exception. As a brief side point, the Watchtower online library only contains awake articles going back to the year 1970. So the screenshot that I just showed you is actually a photocopy of the printed magazine. However, as my fellow activist Ben Ford recently revealed, the organization has digital online versions of all of their publications going right back to the start of the organization, but access to them is restricted. If you haven't seen Ben's video, I urge you to please go and watch it, and I'll leave a link to it right up there. Now on to our second example of blatant hypocrisy from the Watchtower organization in the related subject of xenophobia. In this very magazine that we're discussing, Watchtower defines xenophobia as expressions of hatred based on nationality. The example I'm about to show you is so unbelievably vile that even though my channel is no longer monetized, I fear that YouTube will take action against me if I cover this subject in its full grotesque detail. So instead, I'll explain that the organization's second president, Joseph Rutherford, was fiercely anti-Semitic. And under his leadership, the Watchtower organization published several portions of nourishing spiritual food that openly attacked Jewish people, characterizing them as greedy, selfish, and without conscience. One such quote is from the February 23rd, 1927 edition of the Golden Age magazine on page 343. But by far the most disgusting and notorious instance of anti-Semitism in Watchtower literature was the Declaration of Facts. The Declaration of Facts was a 4-page pamphlet in which the organization outlined their support for the Nazi regime in its stance against Jews and the Allied countries of the West. Now, I have a separate video on this topic that goes into much greater detail, and I'll leave a link to it right up there. Now, if you're an active Jehovah's Witness watching this video, I'm sure that your first reaction to everything I've said is to write it off as being apostate lies and misinformation. If this is indeed what you are thinking, I'd like to encourage you to
take the time to check the facts.
And to help you with that, I've put links to all the information I've discussed down below in the video's description. Also, it's worth pointing out that the Declaration of Facts was reprinted 1 year after it was first published and included in the 1934 Yearbook of Jehovah's Witnesses. So if you're able by any chance to get hold of a hard copy of that book, you'll be able to see the Declaration of Facts for yourself in all of its disgusting glory. And that brings us to our final example of blatant and shameful hypocrisy from the Watchtower organization on the subject of homophobia. And even though I can't see you, I can tell that you already know where this is heading.
Hi.
Would you like to make a donation to the marathon?
No thank you.
Yeah, I've been training for it, but I don't know. I hope I'm doing well. Yeah, no, I think so. Oh, we can put next week. Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Shall I put it in the bag, or do you want to wear it now?
No thank you.
What's wrong, honey? You got something against them?
Well, no, I don't have anything against him personally.
So what's the problem?
I respect that they have a right to choose their lifestyle, but as a Bible reader,
Excuse me. I'm a Bible reader too. I go to church, and our church is one of the biggest supporters for this marathon. So what are you trying to say?
Displaying courage now will help me display courage in the future. Well, I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and we believe the Bible teaches sex is for a man and a woman who are married.
Intolerant people.
There will be many others who will come back who will have to abandon their former way of life. I was thinking, as an example, a homosexual. Now, this former homosexual comes back in the resurrection, and he really thought, and he was taught, and he came to believe that God accepted him with that lifestyle. But now he's going to learn about Jehovah's moral standards, and he's going to learn that Jehovah will not lower his standard to accommodate us. We have to come up to Jehovah's standard. Will he change? Will he adjust? It'll be up to him. But you, brothers and sisters, will help such ones to enjoy life eternal. All must learn to walk in Jehovah's righteous ways and willingly choose to do so. But now, what if someone refuses to make the necessary changes? Well, the Watchtower commented on that. It said, after being given ample time, maybe even 100 years, to seek God, some will show that they refuse to practice righteousness. Justly, they will lose life in the new world.
As a side point, Stephen Lett gave this talk only a short while after his own nephew killed himself as a direct result of being shunned by friends and family for being gay. His name was also Stephen, and his sister Brandy uploaded a video to YouTube explaining the whole situation in detail, and I'll leave a link to it up there. So we all know that the JW organization is homophobic. It's no secret. But what angers me about this particular magazine is the manipulative and disingenuous way that the organization presents its stance on this subject. On the one hand, the magazine starts off by speaking out against homophobia, but take notice of a later article in the same magazine speaking about how to be impartial. Now this paragraph defines impartiality. Under the subheading what it means, it says, Jehovah God does not judge us by our nationality, race, skin color, or culture. Did you notice what was missing from that paragraph? So the magazine starts off by speaking about hatred based on race, nationality, and sexuality in order to present a very tolerant and progressive stance on those issues. But by the time you get to this article, which is about a third of the way through the magazine, they've quietly dropped the subject of sexuality. This is nothing but a trick. The sentiments expressed at the beginning of the magazine are just a lure. Watchtower has by no means softened their stance on homosexuality, but what we're seeing here is a blatant misrepresentation of what their stance actually is. This has left me wondering, is this the shape of things to come from Watchtower? The organisation obviously knows that LGBTQ plus rights are a very hot topic in the world at the moment. It's something that a lot of people are thinking about and speaking up about. Knowing what Jehovah's Witnesses believe and knowing how they think, I cannot foresee a time where they will ever soften their stance on homosexuality, let alone reverse it. But is what we've seen now the start of a new direction of misrepresenting their stance in order to make their religion more appealing? Your guess is as good as mine. Obviously, I don't know. This is just pure speculation on my point. And in the end, I think we'll just have to wait and see. Well, that's all I have for you today. But before I go, I would just like to say a massive thank you to Larchwood, who gave me the inspiration for this video. Larchwood is one of my best friends, a fellow activist, and a Watchtower whistleblower who does an immense amount of work behind the scenes to support the victims of Watchtower's most harmful practices and policies. You can find Larchwood on Twitter as @Larchwood and on Reddit as u/Larchington. So please go and give them a follow. Thanks very much, Larchington. Please keep up the good work. And that's it. Thanks again so much for watching. Please proceed to the Jexit in an orderly fashion, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching to the very end of the video. If you haven't already done so, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you like my work and want to help me continue doing it, please support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Jexit_2020. And with that, I'd like to sincerely thank these very special patrons who make these videos possible.